One thing to consider when you're setting up a gradebook is grade aggregation. Grade aggregation is how Moodle actually calculates the grades. So for this example, I'm looking at a percentage-based gradebook. So in my percentage-based gradebook, I have a category for quizzes. As you can see here, it's worth 20% of the final grade. When I go to grade aggregation, I have some options. If I hit the little question mark, my options show up. The first example of grade aggregation is the mean of grades. So in this example, I have a percentage-based gradebook and I have a category called quizzes. And quizzes are worth 20% of the final grade. How I want that 20% to be calculated is up to how I designate the grade aggregation. My options are as follows. I could do a mean of grades. In this example, let's say I want to give 10 quizzes, and I want those 10 quizzes to be worth 20%. In the mean of grade aggregation, it would add the scores for every quiz for the student and then divide by the total number of quizzes. I could do a median where the middle grade is determined, the lowest grade or the highest grade, or I could do a mode of grades, the grade that occurs most frequently, or I could do natural. This is the option that most instructors choose. This would be the sum of all grades divided by the score. So in other words, I would take the students' grades on those 10 quizzes, add them up, and divide them by the total possible points. The two most common are this natural method, where it's the number of points the students earned divided by the total possible points, or the total sum of points divided by the number of actual quizzes. Next, we're going to look at grade aggregation methods for a points-based gradebook. As you can see in this scenario, I have 3 quizzes, all worth different point values. I have a midterm exam and a final exam. There are really 2 different methods by which I can calculate final grades. To do either one, I want to go into the grade settings for the course. So right here on this top folder where it says My Sample Course, I'm going to edit the settings, show more, and here's where I get my grade aggregation options. I went over these options in the previous segment, but for a points-based gradebook, we're really looking at 2 different methods. We're looking at either natural or the mean of grades, and it is completely at the discretion of the instructor how you want this calculated. If we go with the mean of grades, again, I can click on the question mark icon and get the definitions. In the mean of grades scenario, I have all of the grades totaled up. So in this case, I have the student's score on all 3 quizzes added to their score on the midterm and their score on the final. And I would divide that by 5. Or I can do a natural grade scenario. In this scenario, I would add up the total number of grades earned and then divide by the number of points possible. Now let's take a look at how changing the aggregation method can affect final grades. So this is a points-based gradebook. In the first scenario, let's look at how grades are calculated using a mean of grades. Again, this is where the total score on all of the assignments is added and then divided by the total number of assignments, in this case 5, as we have 3 quizzes, a midterm exam, and a final exam. When we go over to View, we can see that test student 7 has an average of 88.8 B+, test student 3 has an 86.4. If we go back to Setup, and I go into Edit and Edit Settings, and I change the aggregation method to natural, it's going to divide the total number of points by the total number of points possible. I go back to View. And now we see that this student has gone into A territory with a 92%. So how you choose to aggregate grades can greatly affect the final grade in the course. It's a very important decision to make. In this case, the reason why Test Student 3's grade changed so dramatically is because of their performance on the final exam. 95% on that final exam, and that final exam, as you may recall, if we go over to setup, was worth 200 points. So the 200 points on the final exam is going to carry a lot of weight because we have a natural grade aggregation. So a good performance on a high stakes assignment is going to carry more weight. Whereas if we did a mean of grades, it's going to be out of 5 assignments. So the point totals still matter, but not as much because we're dividing them between 5 assignments. So it all depends on the instructor's perspective on how they want the final grade calculated. In this natural method, you can see that point totals really matter and carry a lot of weight, thus allowing the student to go from a B to an A.